that you can't tell the position and momentum of something at the same time. That observing something changes what you observe, so there's no objective reality that you're observing. Your subjectivity is interwoven with it. And so they are materialists, right? And they want to reduce everything to some sort of material thing. And they're very critical of religions, and I agree with their criticism, actually. When I say I'm against some of his ideas, that doesn't mean I'm against all of them. In fact, I like to argue that Buddhism is Darwinian, long before Darwin. But I had this debate with Daniel Dennett at one point. I had a lot of fun with him. Because he didn't really want to debate with me, but he was a junior classmate of mine at our prep school. We went to the same prep school. And he idolized me because, wrongly, because there was some story which I won't launch into at length. But anyway, I was a member of a group that was like a little bit of a myth in the 50s, the 58 in this particular school. So he was sort of felt he should listen to me, even though he was really worried about a weird Buddhist, what a weird Buddhist might say. So what I pointed out to him was that they think fundamentalists are simple-minded, and in a way rightly so, because fundamentalists don't want to be part of nature. You know, they want to just be created 5,000 years ago by God, you know, and the soul is always sort of separate from this dirty matter, you know. And then it's pulled back up out if they pray to Jesus or whatever. And then so they don't have to be kind of entangled. They don't want to be connected to some monkey, you know. And then Adam, if you've never seen the film that they make of the creation of 5,000 years ago in Kenya, Adam is lying there on the side with like a stitches for his rib, you know. And where Mrs. Adam was taken out to watch music. And he's all white, so he's a whitey from Alabama. With a beard there in Kenya, you know. I mean, it's kind of really nutty. So I was saying to Dennett, Daniel Dennett was like Dawkins, so on. So I said, you say they're simple-minded because they're disconnected from being relationally part of nature. They're afraid to be, having, their genes coming from monkeys and all those kind of things. You know, they're afraid of that. And you think that's very simple-minded and primitive of them. And in a way, I agree with you. I said, but what about you? I said, you say all life is interconnected in this genetic weave, right? And we're just carrying our genes, and the brain is making us think we're this and that. And we have a brain because the genes thought it'd be useful for us to have a brain, so they can have more genes running around here and there instead. But you know what, Daniel? Those people are not really in nature. They're just God's thing, and they're going to hop back to God later. But you're not here either, I said. Because who's Daniel Dennett? You discovered that there's no Daniel Dennett. I said, great, that's a Buddhist insight, that you have no absolute self. You're able to apply to a relational process. God, you're deep depth, what I'm saying, you're nothing. You're a little piece of nothing. When then you die, you're going to simply be nothing. Your consciousness, therefore, in essence, is nothing. You're carrying a little jar of nothing around inside the middle of your heart. So you also are excusing yourself from relationship to nature. You're excusing yourself from unbounded relationality, that you despise the fundamentalists. So you're a fundamentalist of nothing. They're a fundamentalist of some sort of disconnected soul, and you're a fundamentalist of a disconnected nothing. He kicked it in the head. And I said, in the time, I said, you say you've examined everything about yourself. You've not discovered Daniel Dennett. So you realize there is no Daniel Dennett. So there's no one to give tenure to your next fight. And then I said, but, I said, you don't claim that you can examine the subatomic level of your being. Because you have atoms and molecules and genes, right? They're molecules and atoms and cells. But inside there's atoms, and then inside those are quantum entities. And in quantum, you don't know if it's a wave or a particle or what. Right? You don't know where it is even. So you haven't examined that. There might be Daniel Dennett running around in there. And he said, well, I have to admit that I haven't done it. I said, then you can't say you've examined everything. And therefore, by saying that you're sure there's nothing down below there, you're just making a dogma. And then he wouldn't agree to that because it's public, you know. And so he said, but I can be moral anyway. I said, yeah, you can be moral. I'm sure you are moral. Of course you're moral. You're listening to me and not even punching me. But how moral can you be if you are yourself disconnected from the consequences of what you do? And as a society, now in ancient times, Buddhists and Hindus and Jains used to argue with each other like that. And between the Buddhists, they argued about different varieties of these different views. And within the Hindus, the Indians just argue away, they're just terrific at it. They have great language to argue in Sanskrit. And they did that. But they all agreed on one thing. And that is if the nihilists or materialists in their day, called the Charvaka or Lokayata, if they ever controlled society, you know what I mean, if they were the sort of ministers or the king and controlled society, they would be destructive. Because how is a psycho or a sociopath defined? For example, someone who we are scared of. Someone who is somehow irresponsible in their activity because they are not connected to the consequences of what they do. They somehow are doing that, they're not really there. They have, they have the bipolar consciousness. And they don't feel any sense of responsibility to the consequences of what they do, right? So that makes them frightening people. You follow me? But if you have a theory that just by dying you are out of all consequences of how you live your life and everything you did, or your whole environment, if that's your theory, you basically are cosmically speaking a psycho. So a culture that thinks that the individual just, if it gets bad, they drop a bomb, bam, I'm instantly non-existing. That's life, that's eternal anesthesia. No experience, no pain, nothing. So, I mean, that's not as nice as eating ice cream for life, for eternity, but it's not burning, it's not suffering, it's not having a headache for eternity. It's just nothing. So that kind of society is dangerous. And they all agreed in India that if they ever took over any particular society, it would be very, very destructive, the society that they took over. Because it would be ultimately unethical. Because there would be no personal stake in the individuals of what they did. They just, whatever they can get away with while they're alive, and then bam, they're dead. And there's no consequence. So that's how I debate with Richard Dawkins. But I would agree with him 100% about the evolutionary thing, because Buddhism is an evolutionary thing. To become a Buddha, you have to evolve. The brain becomes a bigger brain, a greater brain. And also, I criticized, actually I got the Dalai Lama to agree with me finally. I worked through in one of those science dialogues. Because there have been some people obstructing this view. And that is that, Buddhists make a big fuss that mind and matter are different things, but categorically different. Precisely because to refute the materialists, that mind cannot be reduced to matter. They have a big argument like that. However, on the esoteric level, they say that mind has the association with energy in order to exist. Mind is never separate from embodiment in energy, and even at a very deeply esoteric sort of soul level, in discussing the mechanisms of reincarnation, they say that subtle mind and subtle energy are the same. So I said to Dalai Lama, when you say to a modern physicist, or psychologist, or neuroscientist, that mind and matter have to be different, and they can't understand the causal process of how mind affects matter, since it's different from matter, it can't touch it from their point of view. What you are not recognizing is that in their view, energy is matter, even though it's movement, it's fluid, and it's not like a brick, but it's still matter. So you don't say that mind does not have energy. You say it does have energy, right? Yes. Then actually you're making it too easy for them to reject the idea of mind and reincarnation by saying that mind is absolutely not material. In other words, that's another extreme. And so I would concede that to Dawkins. I would concede that the spiritual types who try to say there's a completely non-material mind that's somehow interactive with material energetic processes, that is an exaggeration on a simplistic level. And on a more subtle philosophical level, one concedes that at the deepest layer, mind and matter are one, the way that they say. But it doesn't mean that mind is only matter. It also means matter is mind. If you follow me. It's a little bit of a subtle point, but Dawkins might like it. I would give him that, concede that to him. But he would still freak out, because he feels his job is to guard his colleague from being burned at the stake by a bunch of religious fanatics. No, that's what they think. Him and Carl Sagan was the same. And so they're very reluctant to leave any room for a soul or something, because they suffered from these inquisitions and things. And they don't want to admit that they have a kind of inquisition today.